We have discussed so many things when it comes to the horrors of Hollywood. From alleged Illuminati rumors, to yachting, to alleged assault, violence, overworking children, and now apparently even selling children. In Hollywood, we see celebrities with their kids, and their kids aren't just kids. They're literally props in some cases. And these kids being props in order to allow their celebrity parent to up their image. There is a whole dark history of celebrities, actors, actresses, and singers literally buying babies. We have a lot to discuss in today's video. But what is up, you guys? My name is Toni. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing Hollywood's dark secret of the black market of selling babies and surrogacy. But before we get into today's video, you guys know I like to start off with a little bit of positivity. So let's first start off with the quote of the day. Today's quote of the day is, "I am thankful to tough times for the lessons they teach me." Today's verse of the day is Thessalonians chapter 5 verses 16 through 18, and it reads, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Please make sure you guys are following me on all my social media platforms. I am not only on YouTube, I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. Toni Bryanne TV, this channel is now also a podcast, so you don't always have to just watch me, you can now listen to me. I am available on all audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Audible. That will all be linked down below so you guys can watch me on the go. And please be sure you guys subscribe to my other podcast, the Decision Podcast, where we talk about how one choice can impact your entire life. And if you want to be a guest on that podcast, I will be linking the Google form down below so that you can apply. As I say in every video, please be sure you guys are grabbing your snacks and get a nice beverage. I will be sipping on some wine from Avaline. This wine is organic, made from organic grapes. It is free from added sugar, concentrates, and artificial coloring, and it is completely fat-free, so you can drink without feeling guilty. And the wine is actually strong. So if you guys want to go ahead and check out Avaline wine, I will leave them linked down below. And this month, you guys can get 15% off your first bottle. It's already a very affordable bottle of wine, so that extra 15% off is extra sweet. Cheers to that, and without further ado, guys, let's get straight into today's video.
Taking you in this moment.
When you think about the golden age of Hollywood, you think of all glitz, glamour, and picture-perfect families. Now, imagine the dark secret lurking behind that perfect image, and that is babies being stolen, traded, and sold in order to preserve the illusion of their perfection. From the mid-20th century's black market baby trade to today's celebrity surrogacy controversies, Hollywood has a very chilling history of treating children as commodities and props. So, as I stated, in this video, we're going to be removing that rose-colored glass to expose a horrifying truth of Hollywood. But let's first start off with Hollywood's perfect family image that was needed in a lot of celebrities' homes. So in classic Hollywood, studios controlled every aspect of a star's life, from their hair, to their wardrobe, to their friends, even to their partners, including the families they choose, quote unquote, to create. So at that time, the ideal American couple had 2.5 kids. I never understood the concept of saying 2.5 kids. Like, is half a kid missing? Is it either 2 or is it 3? I don't know what 2.5 is, but that's the average number of children that American couples had. And I think that even is still a statistic to this day. But as an actor, having children was a marketable image, and studios were super eager to promote their actors as wholesome spouses and parents, even if that wasn't exactly the case. So for male stars, having a beautiful wife and child enhanced their likability. And as for the female stars, motherhood could soften their image, but only under the right circumstances. So as you guys can imagine, an unmarried pregnancy or infertility could threaten a starlet's career. So that led Hollywood executives to take extreme measures to keep up appearances. For example, actress Loretta Young secretly gave birth to a baby fathered by Clark Gable. You may know him as playing Rhett Butler in the hit movie and now a classic, Gone with the Wind. He also was known to be King of Hollywood. So in order to hide the scandal that Loretta had a baby unmarried, she was forced to stage an adoption of her own biological daughter to hide the fact that she was outside, okay?
Well, my mother, Loretta Young, did a film with my father, Clark Gable, called Call of the Wild. and it was the first time that they'd ever done a film together. They went on location. One of the largest snowstorms hit, and the whole company was snowed in. So my mother and father had a very long time to get to know each other and fall in love. When the gossip began about my mother and father falling in love and my mother being pregnant, everyone would call the house, my mother's home, and say, show yourself. I mean, all Hollywood has to see is you, and, you know, they'll know that this is gossip. Well, my mother couldn't show herself because indeed she was pregnant with me. I was put into an orphanage, and at 19 months old, my mother announced to the world that she had adopted me, but it was all a smokescreen, and it fooled nobody. I looked like my father. I had my father's very large ears. And when I was small, if I went in public with her, I always wore bonnets, so my ears were covered.
This elaborate plan pretending to adopt her very own child that she delivered in secret shows how far Hollywood would go in order to preserve the facade of the perfect family image. And for many stars, the pressure to have children for public relations was intense, even if they weren't ready or if they couldn't even conceive. Some studio contracts quietly encouraged stars to adopt if they couldn't have kids naturally, ensuring that the press had a happy family story to tell. But to be clear, in the 1940s and the 1950s, adoptions carried a stigma, and it wasn't as common as it is today. You were expected to carry and birth your own child, but be back on that screen within a couple of weeks. Adoption was considered a no-no because that wasn't your real baby. So when a lot of big-name actors suddenly acquired an infant, rumors were constantly swirling on where the heck did they get that baby from. And I also wanted to be clear, in the 1940s and 50s, women would most likely conceal their pregnancy. Pregnancy back then was considered a private matter, and public displays of pregnancy was often frowned upon, which is so weird to me. But yeah, a pregnancy was literally labeled as a condition, like as if you had asthma. But through whispers on how these stars acquired these random babies, the studios often controlled the narrative. For example, they might put out there that this famous couple might have discovered an orphan in need and they heroically adopted the child. And this would all conveniently be aligned with movie release dates or public campaigns. These adoptions were meant to project family values, but behind the scenes, the arrangements could be murky, and in some cases, the timeline and secrecy of celebrity adoptions never quite added up, which hinted that something or someone was being covered up to protect a star's reputation. So as I stated, with pregnancy being looked down upon, whether you were married or not, and with these actors, actresses, and singers with their high demanding schedule, they couldn't afford to take time off in order to conceal a pregnancy. But they still needed to maintain their image once they got to those childbearing years that people and fans expected of them. And that is what gets us into the concept of baby brokers. By the mid-20th century, a very shady network of baby brokers were thriving in America, especially in places like California and Tennessee. Now, if y'all don't know what a baby broker is basically a baby seller. And this practice is known to be unethical and also illegal in all states in America, at least today. I like to compare it to people that breed dogs. People literally would breed women or take advantage of poorer women by offering them a high demand of cash where they would get a split to sell their child if they had an unwanted pregnancy, or if this was like a teen pregnancy or a pregnancy that was not committed within marriage. In order to avoid the shame, women would literally sell their babies.
Well, tonight's story is about babies right here in the United States, in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1940s, who were taken from their parents and not just handed over to other couples, but sold to other couples with the connivance of a corrupt judge.
So these baby brokers, often operating under the cover of legitimate agencies or medical clinics, made a fortune by trafficking infants. Probably the most notorious baby broker was Georgia Tann, who ran the Tennessee Children's Home Society from 1924 to 1950. Georgia basically turned a well-respected orphanage into a front for a black market adoption scheme. In this black market adoption scheme, she's alleged to have kidnapped an estimated 5,000 babies and sold them off to affluent families.
For during the 1940s, Tann took hundreds, maybe thousands of babies from their birth mothers, mostly women who were poor or uneducated and so couldn't fight back. And then she would place the babies with childless couples who would pay up to thousands of dollars. Tann told those parents the money was just to cover expenses. But in truth, most of the money went into Georgia Tann's pocket.
So as I stated, these vulnerable young mothers, often poor, unmarried, or in very difficult situations, were preyed upon by Georgia in order to sell their babies. Now, some were coerced into signing away their newborns, but crazy enough, some were told that their baby had died shortly after birth, but come to find out, that child was told to the mother that they had died, but instead they were whisked away to be sold to these affluent families.
Steve Popper was one of those babies. He was born in 1943, but was taken from his mother the moment she gave birth. She's searched for her son ever since, and now those years of waiting and wondering are finally about to be over. On board Flight 403, arriving at the Memphis airport, is her son, now 48 years old, a son she has never met.
There he is.
Is that him? Oh, that handsome devil.
How you doing?
Okay, Rudy, bless your heart, Steve.
Good to see you.
Oh, this is what I've been praying for, Steve, honey, ever for the longest.
Don't be nervous, man.
Proud of your Steve.
How effing sick is that? Talk about straight sinister. And let's be clear, Georgia could not have possibly gotten away with this by herself. No, Georgia had very powerful allies too, including a corrupt judge in her back pocket. So this corrupt judge would help her fast track the process so parents lost their rights almost instantly.
Tann's baby business grew, and she needed more and more children. And so she turned to her good friend, a juvenile court judge named Camille Kelly, who was well connected in Memphis city government.
She had a stooge down in the welfare department when someone would apply for assistance because they'd lost their job. This person would get their name, get in touch with Camille Kelly. Camille Kelly would send a deputy out and pick them up, take them back, award custody to Georgia Tann, and Georgia Tann would sell them. They were gone before you could do much.
On top of that, she also would falsify birth records, making it nearly impossible for the real parents to ever track down their child.
Mary Reed was unmarried back in 1943, and just moments after giving birth to her son, she was told to sign some routine papers. Could you read them at the time? Were you capable of reading and understanding what?
I know, because I think they probably just got me when I was under the influence of the, anesthesia, and everything.
She was groggy, but she signed, just like a woman named Georgia Tann told her to. Tann was well known as the director of the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and she promised she'd look after the baby until Mary was out of the hospital. But that is not what happened. You went to the Tennessee Children's Home Society to try to get the baby
I
back?
sure did, They wouldn't give me no kind of information, no records, nothing.
What, they just turned you away?
They sure did,
It was only then that Mary learned those routine papers were actually adoption papers. She had been duped into giving up her son. And even though she went to court to try to get him back, it was no use.
With Miss Georgia in control, baby brokering wasn't just shady. It was a full-on business that she turned into something brutal and wildly profitable. And the sad part is, desperate couples who really wanted a child were paying top dollar under the table, and Georgia knew exactly how to play the system. How, you might ask? Well, in Tennessee, adoption was supposed to be free, but she found a loophole. If she sent these babies out of state to wealthy places like New York or Hollywood, she could charge whatever price she wanted. And while those families walked away with their perfect little bundle of joy, the birth mothers were left devastated and often completely in the dark.
He discovered Georgia Tann had forced a lot of young mothers to sign papers when they were too sedated to know what they were signing.
That's absolutely true. And I've had the mothers tell me that. Now, they would come, and if they were unsedated, and tried to hold on to the babies after the baby was born, then Georgia Tann would step in and say, well, you don't want your people in your hometown to know about this, do you?
But Tann would never tell those mothers what she planned to do with their babies.
The parents thought they were going to be held in safekeeping, and before they could do anything, the babies had been sold and sent to New York or California.
And that is just what happened to Mary Reed's son. Less than a week old, he was sold to a family in New Jersey. They named him Steve Popper. He grew up knowing he was adopted from the Tennessee Children's Home Society, but never knowing the truth about how he was taken from his birth mother.
There was one mother by the name of Alma Sipple who was told her newborn daughter needed medical care. So Alma handed her daughter over to Georgia's people, only to be told days later that her baby had died and was already buried. But the truth was far more worse than Alma could ever imagine. Her baby was actually very much so well alive. She was sold off to another family, given a new name, and given a completely new life without Alma's consent. And unfortunately, stories like this one weren't exactly rare. Georgia's network would literally stalk maternity wards or roam poor neighborhoods, snatching babies whenever the opportunity would come up. Then she'd forge paperwork so the adoptive parents' names were written right on that birth certificate. With that kind of cover-up, the real parents never stood a chance of finding their children again.
Tann printed slick brochures to advertise the children. At holiday time, she'd plant newspaper stories offering Christmas babies available for adoption. She shipped babies from coast to coast on late-night flights, and then would distribute the babies to waiting parents in the lobby of a hotel, like the Biltmore in Los Angeles.
And crazy enough, Georgia was not the only black market baby broker. In the 1950s, a small-town Georgia physician named Dr. Thomas Hicks ran a very similar scheme out of his clinic. For around $1,000, which was a huge sum then, actually, let's look up the equivalent really quickly. So according to in2013dollars.com, $1,000 in 1950 is the equivalent in purchasing power to about $13,400 in today's standards. But yes, Dr. Hicks would perform illegal adoptions with no court oversight. He would literally list the adoptive couples as the birth parents on the birth certificate and hand over a newborn as quietly as possible. Similarly to Georgia, Dr. Hicks found many of these babies by taking advantage of women in trouble. He ran an abortion clinic, and when women carried to term, he'd persuade them to give up or sell the baby. And as we all know, abortion is frowned upon now, so you can only imagine how frowned upon it was back then. At least 200 infants were sold through the Hicks clinics in the 1950s and 60s, before this black market ring too came to light decades later. From Memphis to Hollywood, this era saw hundreds of secretive baby deals, all enabled by lax laws, money, and silence. The eerie truth is that, for the right price, a Hollywood couple could literally buy a newborn almost instantly, no questions asked. Whole time, a poor mother's baby could vanish without a trace. Alright you guys, quick PSA because this literally saved me on my last trip. Lumi is that girl when it comes to staying fresh. I'm talking about jumping out of the pool to going to dinner to running around all day and somehow still smelling like I just stepped out the shower, no lie. So what makes Lumi different? It was created by an OBGYN, so it's safe everywhere. Like everywhere. And it's clinically proven to block odor for up to 72 hours. I'm using the starter pack, which comes with everything: stick, sprayer, cream, wipes, and even a mini body wash. And it's baking soda free, aluminum free, and pH optimized, so it's not gonna throw your body off. Now, y'all already know, traveling or not, we all need something that works before the funk hits, and Lumi does just that. It fights odor at the source with the mandelic acid. Fancy, but effective. So if you're trying to stay fresh, confident, and not worry about anything while outside this summer, use my code at checkout and hit the link in my description. Thank you so much, Lumi, for sponsoring this segment of today's video. Now let's get back into today's video. So let's talk about some of these celebrities that have ties to the baby trade. So as we have already discussed, Hollywood was deeply entwined in this secrecy baby market. In order for some stars to maintain their carefully crafted and curated images of domestic bliss, along with their managers and studio executives, they would turn to people like Georgia Tann to obtain children.
She provided children to Hollywood celebrities like June Allison. And Joan Crawford got her twin girls from Tann, too.
Georgia's client list reportedly included a number of celebrities and powerful figures. In fact, actresses Joan Crawford and Mary Pickford and power couple Dick Powell and June Allison were just a few of the famous names who received children through Georgia's operation. These stars publicly celebrated their new additions, posing for photographs with their adopted sons and daughters, but never revealing that the adoptions had been arranged by a woman who stole stole babies for profit. Now, I want it to be clear, it is very unlikely that these Hollywood parents knew the full horror behind their very easy and quick adoptions, but their money inadvertently fueled the black market demand. Joan Crawford, for example, adopted multiple children in the 1940s and 50s, and at least one of her adopted daughters was said to have come from Georgia's Tennessee home. Have y'all ever heard of the movie Mommie Dearest? Yeah, that was based on Joan Crawford and her abuse of her eldest daughter, Christina. And here's the chilling part that most people do not know. Christina was actually one of Georgia's babies. Yes, the little girl behind Mommie Dearest, she was trafficked through Georgia's black market adoption network in the 1930s. And she was handed over to Joan Crawford like it was just another Hollywood adoption. So when Christina grew up and wrote Mommie Dearest, exposing all of the abuse, it wasn't just about surviving a toxic Hollywood household. It was about the story of a child who had been stolen from her real family and dropped into the arms of a movie star. So it also shows that these wealthy adoptive parents weren't exactly background checked. All they needed was a fat check in order to be granted a baby. So who knows what half of these coerced or stolen babies went through with their new adoptive families.
Tann seemed to care little about the qualifications of the adoptive parents. Many were abusive.
Mary Pickford, a Canadian actress who was known as America's sweetheart, and her husband Charles Rogers, or also known as Buddy Rogers, turned to Georgia's network when they struggled to have biological children, adopting a baby boy in 1943. And to the public, it was a beautiful and heartwarming story of Hollywood philanthropists giving an orphan a better life. But behind closed doors, money had been spent and records had been sealed in order to hide that baby's origin. And as stated prior, Hollywood's adoption intrigues weren't always about infertility either. Sometimes they were about scandal prevention. The Loretta Young case is one infamous example of a starlet going to extreme lengths in order to hide an out-of-wedlock pregnancy, as we mentioned earlier. But there's another example. So in the 1950s, a popular actress suddenly adopted a baby after a mysterious several-month hiatus. Gossip columnists whispered, there were no gossip blogs at this time, that the child might actually be her own illegitimate offspring. Now, the studio's PR machine spun such stories masterfully. They would rather concoct an adoption tale or facilitate a quick and quiet adoption through a fixer than let their sweet box office darling or America's sweetheart be seen as immoral. It was kind of an open secret back then that the studios had these so-called fixers, and their whole job was to quietly clean up scandals, whether that meant arranging a secret adoption, hiding a birth, or even covering up an abortion. They did anything in order to keep their star's reputation completely spotless. And of course, back then, that was very easy to do. The constant pressure to present this picture-perfect family led to some truly bizarre Hollywood narratives. Stars who became pregnant by married men or in other scandalous situations often disappeared from the public eye for a time. Then they reappeared with this adopted baby. The public, of course, had no idea, and on the surface looked picture perfect, but behind the scenes, tabloids and fans were constantly speculating which Hollywood babies were actually real and which ones had been conveniently placed in order to hide reality. And honestly, that suspicion wasn't completely far-fetched. I mean, some adoption records really were faked, which means a few of these so-called adoptions could have actually been a star's own biological child hidden under a cover story. Other times, yes, the babies were truly adopted, but they were adopted through shady and unethical practices. These children had zero say. They weren't just kids, they were just props in Hollywood. And unfortunately, living proof that a star's life matched the wholesome image the studios were so desperate to sell. And I want to reiterate that it's important to remember the human cost of these Hollywood adoption secrets. For every star happily cradling a new baby in a publicity photo, there was likely a heartbroken mother somewhere who had just lost their child. The victims of the black market baby trade were overwhelmingly young and vulnerable women and their children. Many birth mothers spent decades not knowing if their child was dead or alive. The young woman we discussed earlier, Alma Sipple, the mother from Memphis who was told her baby had died, well, her daughter she named Irma, and unfortunately she only discovered the truth 40 years later when she saw a TV report on Georgia Tann and realized her daughter might have been one of those stolen kids. And crazy enough, in 1989, Alma saw a segment of Unsolved Mysteries about Georgia's scandal. She recognized the story and ultimately tracked down her daughter, who had been sold sold and raised under a different name. Their reunion several decades later was bittersweet, but well overdue. This is just one example of a mother losing that relationship that she would have with her child due to her child being stolen from her. And unfortunately, countless other women never saw their babies again. Georgia's crimes alone left thousands of families permanently separated and damaged. Some children were literally kidnapped from hospitals or front porches, meaning their parents never even had a chance to fight for them. The children, meanwhile, often grew up unaware of their true identities. Many only learned in adulthood, if ever, that they had been adopted, let alone abducted.
I never had any desire to find my birth mother, birth father, because of the fact that felt if they put me up for adoption, they didn't want me, so why should I want to find them?
He says he always believed he had been unwanted, abandoned.
But here I was condemning this woman for giving me up all these years and never wanting to find her, and when in fact it was just the opposite. I was taken from her, and she was trying to get me back. She did want me.
That discovery led Steve Popper to search and search, and finally he was able to learn his birth name, and then he found his mother.
I got her on the phone. She said, "Oh, honey, I've been waiting for this day all my life. Ever since you were born, I've been waiting for this day."
And he said, Mom said, when I get a chance, says I'm going to get down there and, see you the first chance I get. Oh, I never tell you, I was just crying and shaking all over. It was so exciting.
At a house decorated with yellow ribbons, Steve Popper was welcomed home. He and his family exchanged photo albums and began to catch up on those lost years. And now there is another photo in the album.
Like, imagine discovering that your loving mom and dad unknowingly purchased you from a kidnapper and that your birth family had searched for you for years in vain. The psychological trauma for these adoptees could be profound. And imagine the amount of children that always felt like some part of them was missing, and that some part of them that was missing was their parents, their birth parents that they were stolen from. One survivor of Georgia's scheme by the name of Devereaux Eiler, she discovered in her 70s that she had been a stolen baby. Her birth mother had been told that she had died at birth, a lie that caused immeasurable grief. Like, that is so absolutely sick. You think your child is dead and you're grieving the loss of that child, but that child is just down the street or across state with people that had the funds to purchase that child without your consent. Stories like hers illustrate the lifelong ripple effects of these crimes. Beyond the emotional trauma, some of the black market adoptees endured abuse and neglect in their new homes, as we stated earlier when it came to Christine, actress Joan Crawford's daughter. But Georgia didn't care about the kids' safeties after they were gone. She just cared about that check. There are unfortunately reports of children placed with these wealthy clients who were mistreated or exploited by them, and some even being treated as servants or worse. And for the many children who did not get adopted quickly, life in Georgia's orphanage was horrific. At least an astounding 19 children in her care died from neglect or abuse. And the craziest part? Investigators suspect the true death toll was far higher, with one estimating around 500 children dying under her watch, with some of their little bodies sometimes being buried in unmarked graves.
And she also cared little about conditions in her own orphanage, for despite the publicity photos, medical care there was almost non-existent. During an epidemic of diarrhea, more than 40 babies died. But the adoptive parents knew nothing of the conditions at the home, nor for that matter just where their babies were coming from.
There was an inmate up at the Western State Hospital for the Insane that had babies just every year. No one knew who the father was or the fathers, whether they were other inmates or whether they were attendants. But she placed them out as being healthy children.
It was Taylor's investigation in 1950 that put Georgia Tann and the Tennessee Children's Home Society out of business. Georgia Tann died just as the results of the investigation were being made known. Judge Camille Kelly died a few years later. Neither had been prosecuted.
The Tennessee's Children's Home Society was later dubbed a house of horrors, and all of the suffering was the complete opposite of what Hollywood would show when it came to the bright family portraits of these celebrities that would purchase children from Georgia. The idolized Hollywood baby announcements and adoption stories of the mid-century had a body count and a trail of tears, even if no one cared to recognize or acknowledge them at the time. But the underlying issue of the wealthy and powerful treating babies as commodities commodities did not vanish. It honestly simply just evolved. Fast forward to today, and you'll find a new form of baby brokering making headlines in Hollywood, and that is with surrogacy. But we will get into the problematic aspect of surrogacy and these celebrities in another video. So if you guys want to see part 2 of this video discussing modern day baby brokers, I'll be more than happy to get that video ready for you guys. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I know this video could be gut-wrenching, and it honestly is so saddening what these children have gone through and these young mothers. Though a lot of the mothers are most likely deceased today, those children can very well still be alive. I mean, my grandmother was born in 1940 and she is still here and she is strutting down the street. But I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below when it comes to Georgia Tann and people like Dr. Hicks and Hollywood executives and actors and actresses and singers and just the entire black market of buying babies. But you guys, if you guys like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you guys so much for watching. We are very quickly approaching 300,000 subscribers. We have about a little less than 10,000 left. We need 10,000 more members to join the Toni Bryanne TV family. So you guys make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share with everybody. I love and I appreciate you guys all so very much, and I will see you all in my very next video. Love you guys. Bye. Mwah.
Taking you in this moment,